What's up, music fam? No matter where you are in your creative journey, at some point we all start to feel a little uninspired. In our pursuit for perfection, sometimes we can simply get in our own way, because we're always trying to make something just a little more perfect than the last time, right? Well, I've been producing for a while now, and I want to help you get past that unnecessary pressure and get into your zone every time. I want to tell you how I find inspiration as a producer. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you've been watching my other videos, you probably know that my way of thinking can be a little old school sometimes. Even as a child, I used to like to sit with the old folks, and I think a little bit of that rubbed off on me. So I'm going to give you a little bit of tough love in saying this before I start. And I want you to always remember these words. There's no such thing as writer's block. Writer's block only exists if you allow it to. Let me ask you this. If you had the opportunity to get in the studio with your favorite artist, and they asked you to make a track for them right now on the spot, would you be able to deliver? Or is there even the slightest chance that you would freeze up? I want you to think about that question as I give you 5 tips on how to find inspiration as a producer. Now, this first tip might seem simple, but when you're feeling uninspired, it might not seem so obvious. The first tip is to simply scroll through some sounds. It doesn't matter what DAW or hardware you're using, or even what your method of creating is. Sometimes just simply going into your space and just listening to some sounds is enough to give you some inspiration. Sometimes I'll start with a simple piano. I think back to a time when I used to play on my granddad's old out-of-tune piano, or when I could only play the piano after church, and how excited I was as I walked up to that piano for the first time in a whole week. Now I have a plethora of piano sounds at my disposal, in the comfort of my own home. Or sometimes I'll start with a guitar VST. I think back to when I was a young producer, and I long for the day when I could get an even almost realistic sounding guitar VST. Or I think back to some of my first keyboards and how fake those guitars sounded. Now I have some guitar sounds that I could have only dreamed of back then. Just thinking of those days and looking at what I have now is enough to get me started sometimes. I remember that day back in 2005 when I finally heard that FedEx truck pull up with my brand new Yamaha motif. I put on some headphones and scrolled through those sounds and learned that keyboard like the back of my hand. Those were all the sounds I had at the time, and it was enough for me. I knew every sound of that keyboard, and those sounds inspired thousands of tracks for me. But now I have so many sounds that I can't even scroll through all of them. Now I can just open up a VST, and usually by the time I scroll through just a few sounds, I'm inspired. My next tip is probably one you've already heard and know well, but for some reason, us producers seem to have a problem with it anyway. Sometimes you just need to get out of the studio and relax, away from the music. Growing up, I knew I wanted to be a producer. So to be able to do that for a living is a dream come true. But it took me a long time to realize that I actually needed other hobbies outside of making music. I have clients I have to deliver music to, as well as working on my own music. And also I have to handle the business side of things. And I used to do it all right here in front of this same desk. If I'm not careful, I can get up at 5 in the morning and work on music until around midnight. So with experience, I've learned to set deadlines that would not put too much stress on me. Instead of telling a client I'll get a track to them tomorrow, I might have to add in an extra day, because I have to factor in time for my wife and kids. And I also have to factor in time for me. I've finally gotten into the practice of taking a nap sometimes. And every once in a while, I might even go to bed before midnight. I'm still working on that part. But at a certain time every day, I ask myself, how much time have I spent with my wife and kids? And if the answer is not enough, I stop what I'm doing and I go and spend some time with them. There's nothing in the world more important to me than looking at my wife and having a conversation with her, or hearing my kids laugh. Also, if you've noticed, I usually have my blinds open during the day. That's because simply looking outside and seeing God's creation is enough to inspire me. Whether it's a sunny day or a rainy day, it's going to inspire me to create something, even if it ends up sounding like a sad song. But taking a break and going outside is even better. For me, just picking up my camera and filming even the most common things is enough to help me relax, and it inspires my creativity. If you're ever feeling uninspired, don't underestimate the power of relaxation. The next tip for me is to simply listen to some of my old music. This does two things. First of all, it reminds me of some sounds and techniques I might have stopped using or even forgotten about. Over the years, we pick up a lot as producers, and there's no way that every style, every technique, or every sound that we use will remain at the forefront of our memories. I do like to look forward, so I don't listen back to my older music too often, but listening back every once in a while brings those styles, techniques, and sounds back and can inspire new music. Also, listening back to my older music simply gives me a sense of accomplishment. Sometimes I'll listen back, and I'll be reminded of the artist's first time hearing the playback of that song. I'll think about their excitement. Or I'll think back to my first time hearing my music on the radio. Just listening back to my older music and remembering these things can give me the inspiration to create something new. Every song I record is a special experience, and usually listening back to those songs helps me find the same inspiration I had when I created them. This fourth tip is one of my favorites. Another sure way to get inspired is by collaborating with other producers, writers, and artists. Coming up as a musician, I always enjoyed playing with other musicians. All it took was one person to start playing. Whether it was the drummer playing a beat, the bass player hitting a bass line, or someone playing some chords. It never took long for everyone else to join in. There aren't too many feelings better than when a group of musicians come together for no other purpose than to simply enjoy making music together. So collabing is no different. I can sit here all day and do it by myself, but there are some things I would never do on my own, because we're all different, and we all have different skill sets and styles to bring to the table. Collaborating now might look a little different than it did in the past, because the internet allows us to collab with people almost anywhere in the world. And even though no collab can compete with being in the same room with a collaborator, it's all in the same spirit. Like-minded people coming together for a common goal is always a sure way to get inspired. And remember, tomorrow you might need to inspire the person who inspired you today. I actually just did a collab with an amazing artist, so I'll show you some of that footage in my next video. And the fifth and final tip is probably the most important one. Just get up and get started. You don't have to feel inspired to create. Sometimes creating is what inspires you. Often, I just put my hands on the keyboard and I begin to create. And what happens is creativity, because I'm in control of my creativity and not the other way around. I decide when I create. Now, of course, I move when creativity strikes. But when I'm not feeling creative, when I'm not feeling inspired, I can still create. I'm a producer, and if music needs to be produced, I can produce it. Like I said before, I don't believe in writer's block. It doesn't exist in my life, and I'm no different from you. Of course, I feel uninspired sometimes, but we don't have to sit around and wait for inspiration to come as we watch opportunities pass us by. Remember, you don't have to feel inspired to get started. It's just important to get started. Whether or not you have the discipline to get started could determine your success or failure as a producer. And you know what? Let me say this for those who might need to hear it. Now, I've been producing for about 20 years, so you might say this is all easy for me. And yeah, it is, but I still have my challenges. I still have to learn new things on a regular basis. I want to encourage those of you who might be a little earlier in your musical journey to keep going. Nothing beats hard work and sharpening your skills to the point of excellence. I remember my first year of producing, someone very close to me literally laughed at my music, to my face. I'm so glad I didn't quit. So to those of you who are feeling a little uninspired, don't quit. Keep sharpening your skills to the point where it becomes so easy for you that you can create even when you feel uninspired. now, I want to thank you for listening, and I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any other tips to contribute, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, you all be blessed.